Start streaming. Since there's no one watching yet. I can take a look and see here. Oh, I got two. Yeah, they're just streaming and they're a little slow because we've surprised them coming on early.
Been late, yeah.
So it's all right. This music goes on for 3 minutes. We usually cut it at 1. Everybody. The extended version of our intro song. I'm Dan Lutz, and I'm here with
Tank.
And we're here on the front lines in the battle against the deep state, the cabal, the Illuminonkeys, and all those that wish to enslave all of humanity for their own selfish reasons. And they're up against a great hero, Trump. As seen in the UN speech that he gave yesterday, I was totally, blown away by that. I watched it twice. Just amazing. He literally was addressing the cabal and saying, we're independent, sovereign countries, and that we are not going to be, subjugated to these evil people, right? It was out and out, just in their face. So we've got a little.
I thought it was incredible what he had to say. Really, maybe the most powerful speech I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I'm totally was blown away at. I mean, we do. I've got a little 3-minute clip, a montage that was set up for it. We can play it. I'm not sure if it includes everything that I wanted to, include on it, but it definitely will have, some good stuff in it. Everything that he said was great. So let's see what it has to say. I'm just
very quotable. Very quotable. Yeah.
I'm just lining it up in a moment here. go.
Over $2.5 trillion since my election to completely rebuild our great military, is also by far the world's most powerful nation. Hopefully, it will never have to use this power. Americans know that in a world where others seek conquest and domination, our nation must be strong in wealth, in might, and in spirit. That all of our partners are expected to pay their fair share of the tremendous defense burden which the United States has borne in the past. At the center of our vision for national renewal is an ambitious campaign to reform international trade. All nations have a duty to act. No responsible government should subsidize Iran's bloodlust. As long as Iran's menacing behavior continues, sanctions will not be lifted. They will be tightened. Iran's leaders will have turned a proud nation into just another cautionary tale of what happens when a ruling class abandons its people and embarks on a crusade for personal power and riches. The dictator Maduro is a Cuban puppet, protected by Cuban bodyguards, hiding from his own people, while Cuba plunders Venezuela's oil wealth to sustain its own corrupt communist rule. Since I last spoke in this hall, the United States and our partners have built a historic coalition of 55 countries that recognize the legitimate government of Venezuela. To the Venezuelans trapped in this nightmare, please know that all of America is united behind you. Today I have a message for those open border activists who cloak themselves in the rhetoric of social justice. Your policies are not just. Your policies are cruel and evil. To anyone conducting crossings of our border illegally, please hear these words. Do not pay the smugglers. Do not pay the coyotes. Do not put yourself in danger. Do not put your children in danger, because if you make it here, you will not be allowed in. You will be promptly returned home. You will not be released into our country. As long as I am President of the United States, we will enforce our laws and protect our borders.
That's the montage. I didn't really get that first part that was, I think, was very.
No, that didn't get anything.
Yeah. So
No,
we can look. We can just start from the beginning because he laid into it right from the beginning too.
Yeah, I would say it's worth it. Put it out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's so powerful. What do you say? I mean, and all the real substance at the beginning.
So no, it was it was very good that nice montage to see what he covered. He covered quite a bunch of things. So let's see. Okay, this is the full address.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and world leaders, 7 decades of history have passed through this hall in all of their richness and drama. Where I stand, the world has heard from presidents and premiers at the height of the Cold War. We have seen the foundation of nations. We have seen the ringleaders of revolution. We have beheld saints who inspired us with hope, rebels who stirred us with passion, and heroes who emboldened us with courage, all here to share plans, proposals, visions, and ideas.
So, do you have sirens going on?
Yeah, of course.
All right, let me mute you for a second here.
On the world's biggest stage, like those who met us before. Our time is one of great contests, high stakes, and clear choices. The essential divide that runs all around the world and throughout history is once again thrown into stark relief. It is the divide between those whose thirst for control deludes them into thinking they are destined to rule over others.
Oh, and that's one of the pieces right there, right? He's
Yeah.
those that think that they're destined to rule
Over others, yeah. That's a powerful truth. I mean, that he's saying he's acknowledging exactly he's really talking about the order very clearly in
Yes.
this next maybe 3 minutes.
I know. This is why it was so over the top. He's saying this at the UN, right? And with everything that's going on, this is really the realignment of the world, and against who? And he's saying, all right, let's continue.
And those people and nations who want only to rule themselves. I have the immense privilege of addressing you today as the elected leader of a nation that prizes liberty, independence, and self-government above all. The United States, after having spent over $2.5 trillion since my election to completely rebuild our great military, is also by far the world's most powerful nation. Hopefully, it will never have to use this power. Americans know that in a world where others seek conquest and domination, our nation must be strong in wealth, in might, and in spirit. That is why the United States vigorously defends the traditions and customs that have made us who we are. Like my beloved country, each nation represented in this hall has a cherished history, culture, and heritage that is worth defending and celebrating, and which gives us our singular potential and strength. The free world must embrace its national foundations. It must not attempt to erase them or replace them. Looking around and all over this large, magnificent planet, the truth is plain to see. If you want freedom, take pride in your country. If you want democracy, hold on to your sovereignty. And if you want peace, love your nation. Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots. The future belongs to sovereign and independent nations who protect their citizens, respect their neighbors, and honor the differences that make each country special and unique. It is why we in the United States have embarked on an exciting program of national renewal. In everything we do, we are focused on empowering the dreams and aspirations of our citizens. Thanks to our pro-growth economic policies, our domestic unemployment rate reached its lowest level in over half a century. Fueled by massive tax cuts and regulations cuts, jobs are being produced at a historic rate.
Let's stop there for a moment. This is because he moved into the economic side, but he was literally just saying that in this first part how important it is for us to cherish our countries, right, and what we have, and the importance of the liberty that we have. I'm just so happy that he is now just putting it straight out there and saying, we're the strongest country. right? We're ready. We're ready to take this on, and he's really just put it right there in front of the globalists and said, globalism is done. That's the enemy. That's what he's labeled.
Yep. Well, he really kind of defines some of the objectives of the globalists, right? He's talking about the individual countries have a great and powerful history that should not be erased, and it should be embraced or something like that. I mean, I can't remember the other word he used, but basically he was saying, like, because that is a common practice, right, of genocide. When you go in, you burn the books, you burn the history, you rewrite it, right, with you as the hero. So now everybody feels like, oh, we're all part of this heroic group, right? And you destroy everything noble and pure and true that existed in the previous culture, because both sides of every war, when it comes to the people, there was nobility on both sides. At the end of the day, everybody was defending their family, the people, their town, whatever, and you can't just erase that. And one side was a villain. Everybody was, even when we use the term Nazi in these terms we define them, you have a massive cultural alignment with personal superiority, and they would probably be given incredible information that supported that. And it seemed like and we will, for the most part, this happens all the time, we'll work so hard to fit in, and be accepted. We fear being ostracized from the group so much that we'll compromise our ethics and change our views on things,
right,
to try to be part of and accepted.
Yep.
And I love what he had to say about this.
Yeah, this whole first part, is the most powerful part. I wish there was more of a pause between, it slid right into the rest, getting into the economics and stuff. But it's breathtaking to see where he's at this point where he's lining up all of the countries, right? He's reminding them, your countries, you're the leaders of these of your people. You have to be for your people.
Right.
It's amazing that they fall into this globalist idea, right? And who's behind it, right? And it's about killing off the population of the world. And they're on the good side, right? They're the heroes, all buying into a satanic spell to commit great evil.
Right. You give up your power for someone else that you think has a higher perspective and that has the authority and the ability to make decisions, solely for the better good of the whole. So when someone like Bill Gates gets up and tells you, there is, a global climate catastrophe, right? It's tragic. Well, to be honest, there is a climate crisis. There is a social climate crisis. There is a religious climate crisis. The economic climate, there's a crisis. These are all the real crisis in the climate that's taking place right now. The real danger has nothing to do with the planet itself. Because we could easily reverse these things. They did, I remember after the towers fell in New York, they stopped all air traffic above New York City. And you could see, in a matter of 2 days, the skies of New York cleared up so much. And the environmentalists were talking about it just by cutting out the air traffic for a couple of days. That's how quickly the environment can repair itself, just by us changing our behavior. Now, it doesn't even make sense for us to continue on this path, because the climate crisis is the backbone to the justification of genocide. To keep saying, oh, there's overpopulation. No, there's not. There's not overpopulation. And it's certainly, even if there was global warming, it wouldn't be because there's too many people. And the United Nations' own literature says there's no connection between the population and the actual state of the environment. The fact that they're putting heavy metals in the air, they're doing all these things to block us from the sun, to limit the oxygen. They reduced the oxygen in the atmosphere by 30%. All that was intentional. It wasn't a byproduct of accidentally we did this.
I was just thinking of, maybe I think one of the reasons they want to eliminate air travel, right, is because if you look out the airplane window, right, you'll notice that we're not overpopulated. It's like 99.99% vacant.
Right. Yeah.
So if you have no perspective, you just buy what's coming through the TV. No, we're overpopulated. And you're in the cities, you're in the system, and you think, oh yeah, we're overpopulated. And then of course the roadways between cities, they get jammed up and filled up along the way, right? And so they look like they're populated. Anyway, so
Well, it's in New York City and like LA, and this is all because you have cars, right?
Mhm.
But when you could have, if you had like for example, if we took the regular subway system, the Long Island Railroad, and the Metro in New York, right, which are the trains that go into New York, and then the subway system is what operates for general travel around the city. Now, these things are all really outdated and antiquated. The tracks haven't been replaced, in the country since like 1958 or something, right? I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah.
And now imagine we go in, and I'm actually proposing this in New York, and I've talked to Kim about it, of replacing all of the trains, right, and really buying the LIR, the Long Island Railroad, the Metro, and replacing them with these anti-gravitational monorails that will be so efficient. I mean, they'll be so efficient. They'll be so much faster. They will reduce the noise population. They'll move with. You'll actually get healthier on the train. I mean, it'll be incredible. So imagine just that alone will reduce the amount of driving traffic, right? Which makes the city feel so crowded and so, just almost toxic when you're always around cars, right? But then when I go to other cities, like New York's like that, the highways in LA are kind of like that. But like, I go to other cities that are like major cities, they're not overpopulated at all. And then based on some of the conversations I have with different people, it's partially because they've been depopulating, right? We've got the birth rate is the lowest it's been in the history of the country.
Right. So, we're in the midst of seeing everything going on around us, where they are presenting these false realities, and now people can look at them, right? And with Trump out there laying it out in front of everyone at that high level, it's the other countries that can now start waking up, right? The leadership, in other words. They were all then falling in line with the UN agendas. It's all about being able to get to the money, right? Because they need the money. The system's set up, just like in Fiji, right? They're not getting any more money. They're falling apart. What happened just before that? They had taken a big loan, right? And then once you're on that loan gravy train, right, you just do what you need to do to get the next loan. So
Right.
So now we're seeing this is now shifting. So it's amazing where we're at. So anyway, let's listen to a little bit more where we're going here and see where Trump's going to take us.
6 million Americans have been added to the employment rolls in under 3 years. Last month, African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American unemployment reached their lowest rates ever recorded. We are marshaling our nation's vast energy abundance, and the United States is now the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world. Wages are rising, incomes are soaring, and 2.5 million Americans have been lifted out of poverty in less than 3 years. As we rebuild the unrivaled might of the American military, we are also revitalizing our alliances by making it very clear that all of our partners are expected to pay their fair share of the tremendous defense burden which the United States has borne in the past. At the center of our vision for national renewal is an ambitious campaign to reform international trade.
I just want to point out, he said it's an ambitious to do national renewal. Is he talking about the Republic? Just wondering. Yeah, it would cross my mind when he said it first.
No, I think that's a good point, by the way. That because what I mean, he states it as if that's a program that we're all, like it's something you register for to be a part of, right?
Right.
Oh, the new National Renewal Program. But in reality, it's like, well, this makes me wonder because I know Create Change, the original grant that we're approved for, right? We are what we described it as is community revitalization, which sounds kind of similar to me to national renewal. And I also know that somewhere there is an official letter where President Trump has endorsed Create Change, that Kim has, that she was getting so that we would not have these issues with the banks. So I would say we're part of that,
No. No, I agree. Yeah. Well, I'll go back a little bit. Let's listen to that again. I think we got it.
This is by making it very clear that all of our partners are expected to pay their fair share of the tremendous defense burden which the United States has borne in the past. At the center of our vision for national renewal is an ambitious campaign to reform international trade. For decades, the international trading system has been easily exploited by nations acting in very bad faith. As jobs were outsourced, a small handful grew wealthy at the expense of the middle class. In America, the result was 4.2 million lost manufacturing jobs and $15 trillion in trade deficits over the last quarter century. The United States is now taking that decisive action to end this grave economic injustice. Our goal is simple. We want balanced trade that is both fair and reciprocal. We have worked closely with our partners in Mexico and Canada to replace NAFTA with the brand new and hopefully bipartisan U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Tomorrow, I will join Prime Minister Abe of Japan to continue our progress in finalizing a terrific new trade deal. As the United Kingdom makes preparations to exit the European Union, I have made clear that we stand ready to complete an exceptional new trade agreement with the UK that will bring tremendous benefits to both of our countries. We are working closely with Prime Minister Boris Johnson on a magnificent new trade deal. The most important difference in America's new approach on trade concerns our relationship with China. In 2001,
Well, just before we go any further, because now he's going to get into China, and he lays into China big time. I mean, it's obvious. Communism is his main target in the world. I mean, he talks about this in Venezuela and Cuba and the rest of that, but China he really lays into. But before we go any further in this trade deal that he has working with the UK, he's going to be increasing our trade with them by 4 times, right? And
Wow.
And any of the countries out there, right, that are on the globalist bandwagon, they're going to see the biggest trading partner in the world, the United States, making deals country by country. And if you're not in line, what are you going to get?
Right.
Right? You'll be out. You'll be out of the lineup. Right? You'll be getting the scraps.
Yep.
So I think this is it's a big important thing to point out. So let's see.
China was admitted to the World Trade Organization. Our leaders then argued that this decision would compel China to liberalize its economy and strengthen protections to provide things that were unacceptable to us, and for private property, and for the rule of law. 2 decades later, this theory has been tested and proven completely wrong.
Boom!
Not only has China declined to adopt promised reforms, it has embraced an economic model dependent on massive market barriers, heavy state subsidies, currency manipulation, product dumping, forced technology transfers, and the theft of intellectual property, and also trade secrets on a grand scale. As just one example, I recently met the CEO of a terrific American company, Micron Technology, at the White House. Micron produces memory chips used in countless electronics. To advance the Chinese government's 5-year economic plan, a company owned by the Chinese state allegedly stole Micron's designs, valued at up to $8.7 billion. Soon, the Chinese company obtains patents for nearly an identical product, and Micron was banned from selling its own goods in China. But we are seeking justice. The United States lost 60,000 factories after China entered the WTO. This is happening to other countries all over the globe. The World Trade Organization needs drastic change. The second largest economy in the world should not be permitted to declare itself a developing country in order to game the system at others' expense. For years, these abuses were tolerated, ignored, or even encouraged. Globalism exerted a religious pull over past leaders, causing them to ignore their own national interests.
So you just label globalism a religion.
Wow, yeah.
But you see, he's going right into China as being part of the WTO, and he says it needs to be reformed. It needs to be changed drastically. So
well, and also he's also playing with terms, right? Because when he's talking about China, even though it manifests in the form of communism, right? The reality is it's not necessarily the Chinese government; it's the Chinese elders, right, or the faction of the Dragon family that's been in control of everything because the Dragon families control the World Trade Order, right?
Right.
That's what this has got to change. It can't. I mean, which I think he's really. If he's talking about it like this, it's obviously something that's well underway.
Right.
Being that Kim has cut them off.
Right. Well, communism is the deep state religion, right?
Right.
So when we're talking about this communism being put into place in China, it was done and announced at the Bilderberg Group, right? That's where it all came together. This is where those particular ideas about how are they going to take over the world through communism. It was first reported by that reporter, and he's the one that labeled it the Bilderberg Group because they met at the Bilderberg Hotel. Right? That they didn't have a name before that, or at least not one that was known. They're now officially, right, been called that. They call themselves that, and they do it kind of like in the open. That all these people are but secretively, right? So everyone knows what's going on. But that, that they wanted to come into China, set them up as the center of everything, and all manufacturing, everything, every other country is a tributary state to China.
Yep.
Everything goes to China, gets manufactured, and then sent back out. That is the system that they want to put in place: the centralized government, the centralized authority, the centralized money system. That's why all the money and technology and everything was moving to China.
Right. Kissinger was quoted by Ben Fulford as saying, it's about time that China was in control, right? Because that was the plan.
Right.
So he said over the last quarter of a century, so the last 25 years, we've lost 60,000 factories, right? And if you look back, right, it was about 1974 that they put the plan in place to transition power from the dragon families in the West, with the black dragons, to the dragon families in the East, with the Chinese dragons.
Which are still
so everything
same family, just different region.
Right, and it doesn't really matter to them. It's it doesn't matter. They're still going to live well and do whatever they want. They're still going to go on with the facade, right? To them, this is all. It's just acting practice, right? You act like it's what's interesting right now is in our government. And I can't tell if it's because I'm more aware, or it's just become so terrible, the acting, right? Like the way they're going after President Trump, I can't even understand how anyone is deceived by this. They keep saying things that are so awful. I mean, they're so transparent. It's so clear that they have an agenda that you would have to be, locked in a room like Clockwork Orange with your eyes open, only watching like NBC, ABC, and CNN or something, because it's very clear they have no proof and no plan whatsoever to do anything for the people at all.
Right.
They have not even. They're not proposing bills.
No, they do. It's to vaccinate us against reproduction.
Right. Save us to free us from having to make decisions for ourselves or think for ourselves.
Right. So they have
that's their version of freedom.
Yeah, they have certain plans, but yeah. All right. Let's roll.
But as far as America is concerned, those days are over. To confront these unfair practices, I placed massive tariffs on more than $500 billion worth of Chinese-made goods. Already, as a result of these tariffs, supply chains are relocating back to America and to other nations, and billions of dollars are being paid to our treasury. The American people are absolutely committed to restoring balance to our relationship with China. Hopefully we can reach an agreement that will be beneficial for both countries. But as I have made very clear, I will not accept a bad deal for the American people. As we endeavor to stabilize our relationship, we're also carefully monitoring the situation in Hong Kong. The world fully expects that the Chinese government will honor its binding treaty made with the British and registered with the United Nations, in which China commits to protect Hong Kong's freedom, legal system, and democratic ways of life. How China chooses to handle the situation will say a great deal about its role in the world in the future. We are all counting on President Xi as a great leader. The United States does not seek conflict with any other nation. We desire peace, cooperation, and mutual gain with all. But I will never fail to defend America's interests. One of the greatest security threats facing peace-loving nations today is the repressive regime in Iran. The regime's record of death and destruction is well known to us all. Not only is Iran the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, but Iran's leaders are fueling the tragic wars in both Syria and Yemen. At the same time, the regime is squandering the nation's wealth and future in a fanatical quest for nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them. We must never allow this to happen. To stop Iran's path to nuclear weapons and missiles, I withdrew the United States from the terrible Iran nuclear deal, which has very little time remaining, did not allow inspection of important sites, and did not cover ballistic missiles. Following our withdrawal, we have implemented severe economic sanctions on the country. Hoping to free itself from sanctions, the regime has escalated its violent and unprovoked aggression. In response to Iran's recent attack on Saudi Arabian oil facilities, we just imposed the highest level of sanctions on Iran's central bank and sovereign wealth fund. All nations have a duty to act. No responsible government should subsidize Iran's bloodlust. As long as Iran's menacing behavior continues, sanctions will not be lifted. They will be tightened. Iran's leaders will have turned a proud nation into just another cautionary tale of what happens when a ruling class abandons its people and embarks on a crusade for personal power and riches. For 40 years, the world has listened to Iran's rulers as they lash out at everyone else for the problems they alone have created. They conduct ritual chants of death to America and traffic in monstrous anti-Semitism. Last year, the country's supreme leader stated Israel is a malignant, cancerous tumor that has to be removed and eradicated. It is possible, and it will happen. America will never tolerate such anti-Semitic hate. Fanatics have long used hatred of Israel to distract from their own failures. Thankfully, there is a growing recognition in the wider Middle East that the countries of the region share common interests in battling extremism and unleashing economic opportunity. That is why it is so important to have full, normalized relations between Israel and its neighbors. Only a relationship built on common interests, mutual respect, and religious tolerance can forge a better future. Iran's citizens deserve a government that cares about reducing poverty, ending corruption, and increasing jobs, not stealing their money to fund and massacre abroad and at home. After 4 decades of failure, it is time for Iran's leaders to step forward and to stop threatening other countries and focus on building up their own country. It is time for Iran's leaders to finally put the Iranian people first. America is ready to embrace friendship with all who genuinely seek peace and respect. Many of America's closest friends today were once our greatest foes. The United States has never believed in permanent enemies. We want partners, not adversaries. America knows that while anyone can make war, only the most courageous can choose peace. For this same reason, we have pursued bold diplomacy on the Korean Peninsula.
Well, let's stop for a moment. Just since you went through this with Iran, I think this is the one place where we could see that the deep state had their own agenda from the very beginning. The cabal wanted the gold of the Shah of Iran. They worked their way to establish, Iran as a powder keg from the very beginning, a place for them to, move out and create this terrorism around the world. This has been their tool to create war. And not to say that, that Iran is not, responsible for everything that's going on there. I mean, as a country, we have to recognize that there is a deep state element that's entrenched there. And I think when there was some reaction against some things that were going on with the ships in there, and they ended up attacking the places where the drones came from, this was a cabal deep state facility that was attacked. So Trump usually uses that kind of tactic, right? When he goes after, the bad actors, he literally is going after the bad actors, not what's presented to the media and the public. So, the ones that are a problem in Iran, are not the people. Again, it's always what's installed into the government and factions within the government.
Yep, no, that's absolutely true. They don't even nobody really talks about this much, but with these what's actually happening. Every time Trump is talking about the Chinese, you'll notice he always speaks very highly of President Xi.
Yeah.
Because President Xi represents the People's Republic of China. Okay? And then you have a whole other faction that's there, right? And then the same exists within Iran. If you listen, there's all types of Iranian people that are standing up, that are pro-freedom, pro-Trump. You can look at Iran like 60 years ago. I mean, it looked like the United States.
Yeah.
It was thriving. It was,
wealth, happiness, yeah.
Right, and they bring in this, this military. And there's really, it's a scary thing with the violent propagandist, military Muslim radical element that's out there, because it's the deception that this is what everyone should do. Right now. It's something I recognize with all religions. If you look at what it means to be free, right? Like you recognize that you have a spirit or a life that is from source, right? From God, that is spiritual in nature. And with that comes responsibility in a sense, right? That you get to make and create a world of your own, right? That exists now. But if everything is down to worshiping God, right? Bowing down to God, these are all terms that worship, right? The admiralty courts, right? It's taking away our authority of being on the land and putting us in the sea, and subjugating us to a dictator type God, right? And so this is where there's always a conflict in Christianity about the God of the Bible, or the God of the New Testament versus the God of the Old Testament, because the God of the Old Testament seems to be one that wants punishment, demands worship, demands subservience, and then the Messiah comes in, and everything he's talking about it seems to really be empowering people if you actually listen to what he's saying. And he's trying to get people to realize that they're not separate from God. Right? And his whole ministry is really about that. But the traditional Christian theology, right, the essence of what it is Christians for the most part won't even make decisions for themselves, right? Now, and I can't say this about, I'm not trying to lump all Christians together, but there is a doctrine there that encourages this subservience, right? So there's a need to constantly say, as long as it's okay with God. Well, the reality is that, if you have the Holy Spirit in you, I'm just using that term that's a common term right now. And the Godhead is the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit. right? That's what everyone says. So that would mean that some measure of God is in you. So the real question is it okay with you, right? Because if it's okay with you, then you could conclude, well, it must be okay with God because that's God in you. But instead, we're so afraid to make decisions for ourselves, and we've been trained that if we do that, there's something wrong with it, right? That we're egotistical, or we're vain, or we have some alternative agenda, which in some cases might be true, but in reality, just to make a basic decision, I talk to Christians all the time, and one of the things this is really an amazing phenomenon. I promise this fits in what we're talking about. So. I've been talking to this group of decoders, right? They decode various things that the factions put out through symbols and messaging, and they grew up, being trained in the as part of one of these factions of the order, right? So this one woman I speak to, she was trained to be the I don't know, some random title of the covens, right? To be like the next Mother of Darkness, right? Some, very feared. And now she wants nothing to do with it, right? But she was trained, and part of her training was she watched 1,000 people sacrificed every single month for 10 years, right? So imagine now. So her only way out of it, right, is now when you're subjected to that kind of trauma over and over again, what happens is your brain fractures, right? So now she has this incredible testimony where she's like, she was thrown into one of an open grave in the catacombs of Chicago, right? The underground tunnels that allow them. They usually connect to like the hospitals, the police stations, the diocese, right? And then like usually a waterway where they dump bodies, I guess, right? And she was thrown in the catacombs, and she describes how the Lord appeared and picked her up and carried her, to safety, kind of thing, right? And I wonder as she describes this, because what it sounds like to me is that she fractured. Because imagine she was like 7 years old, right? Imagine how terrifying it would be to be thrown in a grave at 7 years old after just, witnessing some kind of ritual sacrifice. And so your brain fractures to create a safe place for you, right? So in her safe place is where she is, one with the Lord. Now, she probably got up and walked away, and in that, but every bit of her memory was very real and comforting to her as the Lord picked her up. Now, I'm not saying that couldn't happen. I'm not trying to discount, that expression of God. But more practically, at the end of the day, it's like, when you want a sandwich, you don't pray for the sandwich, right? You just get up and go make a sandwich, And the same that really applies to everything else is that if we just realize that we are one with God, we're made of the same substance that God is, right? And He made us this way. Now, what parent wants their child to forever be dependent on them? That's not a parent's job. A parent's job is to get the child to recognize their own abilities and develop them, and then go out and push the boundaries to see what they can do, right? That would make any parent proud. You want to show you appreciate your parents, right? You apply the things that they taught you, right? Like when the first time you see your child say please and thank you without you telling them, those little victories as a parent are rewarding, right?
Right.
So now that's one version. So what ends up happening to this whole group of kind of Illuminati decoders is they're all hardcore Christians, right? And so they're in this fourth dimension, and they're limited. They're having real spiritual battles still, right? Because they were trained on that too. And they're having like these, they're hunting down assassins and all of a sudden. And what ends up happening is your whole world becomes about fighting the evil, right? Your whole world is, because you were raised in this evil, you want to fight it. So all you do is you're fighting the evil. And what happens is you're just bringing more fight and more evil to you because that's all you focus on. So the better focus, in my opinion, is to focus on elevating yourself, right? And I don't mean elevating yourself above others, but to elevate your own understanding, your own appreciation for God in you. What does the expression of God look like as it's manifested through your life, right? And instead of that being a subservient thing, it should be something that should empower us and encourage us to be the best expression of ourselves, and constantly looking for ways to better demonstrate that, right? Now, I just watched this speech from a from a Muslim, I don't know what they're called, a minister of some sort, and he was saying, you were put here to worship Allah, and if you don't worship Allah, you will be made a slave, and you can be an honorable slave to Allah, or you will be put to death, right? And this is what is taught as a doctrine, right? These are the only options. So if that's the doctrine of an entire group that is growing in massive numbers, that means more and more people adopting that same mentality, right? And all thinking, I have to be subject to Allah, right? I have to be subject to. It's just a different form of slavery, is my point, right? Now we're slaves to this, and if you don't believe what I believe, you're going to hell. I can hate you, or I can pretend to be your friend and do whatever I want. I can pretend to be, whatever with you, but behind the scenes, if it comes down to it, I there's a mentality of it would be okay to kill you, right? And that is what the flaw is, and also it's one of the most common themes in every single religion. They all have a militant kind of radical faction that believes that. That's what the Jesuit order is with the Catholics, which it's just a kind of the mother of Christianity, and the Zionist Talmudic Jews, right? And maybe the Kabbalah, I guess.
Right.
That whole group, right? Just the Kabbalah, right? The Kabbalah.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with radical Islam. Now, for the most part, though, I know lots of Islamic people, and they're lovely. Not because they're Islamic, though. They're just lovely people that happen to be Islamic.
Right.
So, I think.
I agree with you. I mean, that's one of the reasons I've always stayed away from religion. I mean, I went to everyone's church. It didn't matter to me what it was, really. And just to, experience it. Very few that I would say I'd never go back there again. Most have a lot of redeeming aspects of them. They have a different perspective on how to worship. But the idea behind what they want is it's generally for the benefit of everyone, right? That joins them. You're not joining us.
Right.
That's another story. But you join us, and then it's all okay.
Yeah, that's right.
But this is where that problem of religion is, and I stayed out. I stayed out. I mean, I find it fascinating. On my own journey. I stayed away from religion, and then, it was only when I met my wife, and her first thing she said to me, well, you'll have to join my church, and I didn't really have a problem with that, because I go to so many churches, and that was, her requirement. I was willing to do that, and I fully invested in learning the doctrine, and I had a lot of their doctrine I had no problem with, like they don't believe in the Trinity, for example. That kind of thing. And Jesus is a man, not God. That's their form of Christianity. So he's the Son of God. And so they come at it from that side of things, and I said that's fine. I can accept this. I'm not. A lot of these things, like, we don't know until the Messiah comes back, and then we can ask him, hey, is that what you meant? But but what I found was fascinating is this is not an easy church to join. First of all, to get baptized in the church takes a period of time, at least 6 months, just to get prepared.
Sure.
It took me a year to where that was, everything was set and ready to go, and I got the, approval from the minister, right? And they said, this month you're going to get baptized. I said, great. I was waiting for, like, the call and everything to happen and move forward. Didn't come in. I kept asking everyone, what's happening here? Well, we're waiting for paperwork from your wife's, original church, because she was born into this church. So that passed by, and then, and then it's like, it was always for the next year trying to get paperwork. And towards the end of it, I figured out, they're not going to let me in, because my wife was actually destined to marry a minister. That was the plan.
Oh, right.
And I think it was just politics. Right? And the last time I went to the church, and it was already 1 year from that time I was told it was going to be July of 2 years ago, and now last July I said to them, well, now it's already a year and a half. So I said, they said, well, when do you get baptized? I said, I have no idea. This is, this keeps going on. And I said, well, why do you think you're not baptized? I said, politics. And when I said that, I realized I'm not going to do this anymore. I never went back.
Yeah.
Right. So I still never joined. I mean, I never fully, and so I'm still out of the religion side. That was kind of the point of my story of telling it was, I'm fully invested in God. and being part of God's plan and making the path forward, and going wholeheartily, into it.
Yep.
The religion created by man, it doesn't matter. Really doesn't
Well, but in the church's defense, everybody knows that heaven is constantly getting bogged down with paperwork.
I know.
So, because heaven is like, oh my goodness, all the angels are always working, trying to get more people saved.
And then they lose one piece of paper, and it takes like a year to figure it out. And
yeah, it's like, oh, now where did it go? It went to the wrong place. Now, now it's over in Sodom and Gomorrah, and those guys are crazy.
Yeah.
So.
They move very slow as pillars of
Right, exactly. This version of God where God, here is God, the all in all, right? The source, substance, the limits, the bounds, the essence, the origin of all things, of all life, all matter, everything being an expression of that ultimate substance, right? Now that's one version of God. Now, how would you know, what God was to worship, if that's true, right? And then even in that, you have to then turn around and give God credit for the creation of the devil, right? So why did you create the devil, right? Well,
just for fun of it.
Well, it's to show forth, you need contrast.
Right.
But the point is now, so that can't be the God we're talking about, right? So God has to take on some kind of shape and form, right? Now, why is it so hard to believe that, that shape and form, like, the spirit, soul, and body, would be manifest as you, and your expression of God? So now God is defining himself within himself as you, right? And your life is an expression of God's will and his nature, and all, whatever, however it's expressed, you are evidence of that, right? And I mean, and there's a lot more scripture to support that than there is that you need paperwork to be accepted by a church. Like, well, you're not really saved. Like I remember people, like growing up, like, people would get their baby, they were nervous. They would bring priests to the church to have the baby baptized right then, because if the baby died on the way to the church, it was going to go to purgatory. You have to pray it in.
Yeah.
All these different, just silly ideals behind, serving God. But I think we all naturally, the reality is that there was a time on the planet where we all understood that God was in all of us, and that there was those who were a little more connected and could kind of direct people in the best interest, right? Based on the planetary alignment, and understood it. They ended up kind of being what you would consider to be like ministers, right?
And then they wrote it in a book.
That was culture.
And they wrote it in a book. And then other people read the book and said, "Oh, this is what he means." And then it all gets turned upside down.
Well, it reminds me of that movie. I think is it Avatar? No, not Avatar. Is it? It's like with all the blue people.
Yeah,
right.
Avatar.
They're in the southern planet, and at one point, the guy whose soul they put in this, big blue avatar body, right? Mm-hmm. He's doing his video recordings, and he's like, and he says, "We have nothing to offer these people. Mm-hmm. We don't have anything to offer because they live in harmony and at peace with the land itself, right? We can't give them anything because they don't want anything from us, And all humans wanted was just to go in and take their resources,
right,
and the biggest sources out of their most sacred ground. And it's so interesting because that movie, when that movie came out, right, it caused a mass depression, right? This actually happened because people would go in to see this movie, and when they came out, people were suffering from depression because they realized they didn't have any form of that, and there was no way, they didn't know how to have it, right? That type of, kind of a tribal indigenous connection to the planet and to God above and in the planet itself, it didn't exist. Like it's so foreign that people got depressed.
Take
because
it
they realized
easy
everything
from
they're
Fiji.
motivated by was just financial, essentially.
Take it easy from Fiji.
Take it easy.
It's in Fiji. You want to find it? It's in Fiji. So yeah, no, you're right. I get it. The people are they're saying, what are we missing out on? That seems like there's some truth there, and but then they got to go and pay their bills, and it's just how do they get out of the hamster wheel? Right.
Yeah, from what I understand, the other galactics, confused by why do you have to pay to stay on a planet that you were born on, right? So that's not a normal thing. That only happens here.
Yeah.
That's part of the slave system. Because if you constantly have to make more money just to be alive, right, then you're never able to get out of that system.
Right.
You're essentially making the chains that become your prison.
Right. That is the point.
Now I don't think that I don't look at money as being evil. I look at the nonstop pursuit of money and the love of money, I guess, being kind of the root of evil. But but that's all that goes back to the desire for control and the desire for to uphold an illusion, right? And you can see the perversion, right, in the scriptures where you can see where Marduk or whoever, right, one of these characters who believe themselves to be a god, they'll have these bold moments where you can tell like that this doesn't seem like it matches up with everything else. And there's this one scripture, like over in Isaiah, where he says, I will choose your delusion. Right? And he's like, I made everything here. Where's my home? Right? And it's very demanding. This very, maniacal God who needed worship. And I really believe this goes back to, I don't know, the Anu and Marduk and Enlil or whatever it is, and that they just fell in love with the just devouring the energy of that fear and love, because they take out the real words, like you have Job, right, and it says that Satan came to God and he's like, I've been traveling to and fro doing whatever I want. God's like, well, have you considered my servant Job, like persecuting him because and it says he is loyal in all his ways and he fears God, right? And they took out the word love and they put it in fear. He loved God, but they put it in fear because that's what they do.
Yeah.
So.
Just messing with you.
Right.
It's like, so what can we do? What can we do now? We'll just change this word.
That's all it takes. It's one word changes the whole meaning.
Again,
you put Jesus on that. You put Hail Zeus. I mean, if you knew every time you read the Bible and you're like, then Hail Zeus, right? I mean, we say Hail Hitler. Like, if it said Hail Hitler, would we still feel the same way? It's like we all know right away, like that's terrible, right? And it takes away from the real, the principle wasn't that, this was a savior, that we even needed a savior, and that's not what the Messiah came in for. The reality was for us to realize everything you need, you already have, and your awareness of it gives you all the power to use it.
Well, the change, like the changing of a word, just flips the entire meaning. Well, in the money system, it's just a tool, right, to account for your value that you put into developing something, right? So it's a part of the barter system, and so I want this, you want that, we want to exchange, and so this is a tool that at this stage and where we are, we need a tool such as this. Our system's built around everything, but where it got distorted, the perversion was the charging of interest, because then the interest has to come from your future work that you're now indebted to, right? So it creates the debt system as soon as you start interest. And it has to be created from something that, so if you get so far into debt, it's not a measure of your value anymore that's to come. It's like you can't pay it. It's beyond your life's ability in this lifetime. And so that just builds on. So the system gets perverted at that point, and that's when it becomes evil. So, but they says this in the different religions around the world, whether it's Jewish or Muslim. They outlaw charging interest, except for those other people that are not with us. Yeah, them you can do that to, because they're not human.
Right.
So, we can evolve past this whole debt-based system and do something that's completely different and is ours, right? Not the Babylonian money system that was rehashed and done in this way, not the the same system of debt that was put into Egypt 4,000 years before that. We can do this differently and make it our own. Something that is about abundance instead of debt, because we're filled with abundance. The planet's filled with abundance. We shouldn't be having to pay to live here. We should have a system that pays us to live here.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, the people that are coming interstellar travel, intergalactic travel, they want to come interdimensional. Okay, you want to, okay, bring some goods and services with you, along the way. Say, hey, let's do some trade, and
Right, and if you're gonna have you have a world trade order, you should be able to. They should really be looking at things coming in from other planets and assessing whether or not they're going to be in the best interest of the people, based on their ability to assist and support life.
Yeah. Those people
to enhance life.
And those people making those decisions have to be of the frame of a mind of abundance and not of the frame of mind of scarcity, meaning that they need to get theirs. They need to get more than anyone else. They're in position of power. If that system is still the same, where they can get ahead of the game, right? That it feeds that greed. We end up in the same scenario. It just comes in at a different angle, and we end up doing the same thing all over again. So we literally have to have a system that doesn't, that promotes, best wishes for everybody. The one that promotes the ability for us to construct the highest quality of goods and services. Right? Something that's that we want to achieve long span. We don't want a light bulb that dies once a year and you have to replace it. We want to build a light bulb that it just keeps going on for an eternity, unless something literally comes and cracks it by by essence. But it just does what it does because it was built, but not built to be destroyed, or self-destruct. The planned obsolescence. This whole system of debt leads to the worst possible of everything. And if we just change this, make it towards an abundance mindset.
Well, and I look at it like this, right? Like, if you look at the body, which I think the human body is a perfect model to kind of understand kind of the best practices, right? So look at the way your body works. Now, if you constantly have excess energy in the form of calories, right? Your body will store the energy. We'll call your body the savings account. So where does it store it? Well, it saves it in your fat cells. So what do you have? What's the result? Well, you have you'll have the highest level of obesity ever recorded in history. You have, because of excess energy. You have that is being stored in people. You have diabetes at an all-time high. You have all types of cardiovascular disease, cancer, all of these things caused on some level by obesity, because when you have, the same fat cells that were designed to, keep fat in the wintertime, so when you run out of food or whatever, you have to draw on. Well, we don't have famine anymore, right? We don't have a period where we're not eating like that.
Right.
So we're constantly putting excess, more, and it just becomes waste. And think about what fat does. It inhibits your ability to perform in every level, right? Just to function. The larger you are, the harder it is to function, to operate, to be effective, even to think clearly. It makes it harder for your lungs to breathe. It makes it harder for you to walk, move around, to play games, sexual performance. In every way, obesity hurts you because you didn't take those calories and put them to use, right? Now, calories are just energy. So is money.
Yeah.
Just energy. So if there's not, that's why this whole system, right? That
very few are obese in this system.
Right. There's no need for obesity because the money is only supposed to come in based on supply and demand. What is the demand? What are you creating and using your energy for, and therefore it demands that you have more of it.
Well, it's also it's designed to all gather at the top, so it's only the very fat cats at the top. Pun intended.
Right, because they're a bunch of fatheads. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, do we want to swing back over to Trump? We're only halfway through his speech, or do we want to save it for tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll save it for tomorrow. I think that's just about the right amount of time. So.
I think so. Yeah, we've been hour and a half, hour 20 minutes, something like that. So we're doing all right.
Much better than our 3-hour shows we started with. So.
Oh,
improved.
A little lean.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
let me just ask, because we kind of just launched into this. Was there any news from Kim or anything that's going on? I just thought I'd ask because it's good to at least cover it.
I didn't get a direct report today. There's a lot of things that are obviously going on. If anybody's paying attention, there's major economic reports that are coming out, even on Bloomberg, and I forget what the exact way it works, but basically it's any other time the numbers remotely reflected this, it was a signal for a crash that was imminent. Right. And so I would say at this point there is clearly an imminent crash. Obviously the banks, they would normally lend each other money overnight for whatever reason. They've taken the interest rates up to 10%, right? Because they don't trust each other, because they all know they don't have money, right? Yeah. The Rothschilds have stolen everybody's, liquidity, and they've never replenished it. And yet people are still talking about when the Fed window opens, they'll come back. But the Fed window hasn't been open in 7 years, and the Federal Reserve, the charter has been revoked. They don't have any functionality. I'm not even sure what they're doing. Technically, actually, the lease on their building has expired. They don't even have control of that. So,
I thought that was on sovereign land or something like that.
Yeah, it is on sovereign land owned by the trust.
Ah, okay.
So that's the building in New York, and it's funny because we're buying a building in New York, right?
Well, that's a good bit. Well, just make a new lease with the trust and move on in.
Well, I have to have like a bunch of Tibetan monks come in and like cleanse it of all the bad juju.
I'm sure they're willing.
We
can have some Hopi Indians, and we can have some tribes from Fiji. Everyone will come out. We'll all do a cleansing of the Federal Reserve building and create change right in there. Pull down the eagle, put up the create change.
Now that is my dream, by the way. I would love to do that, or actually, I think I'd love to set up the Guardian of Camelot, and I think it would be great.
Oh, that's
because
yeah.
JFK or Jackie O said, there might be other great presidents, but there'll never be another Camelot, because it was the dream, and Camelot is really symbolic of You know, uh,
Nope. Dang. Hello, dang. Not muted, just no volume.
so you know,
Oh,
now
you're
just
back.
give it to me.
You
That
faded. You
organization.
faded out for about a minute.
Oh, that's right. When I'm pulling my driveway, for some reason it leaves out. Yeah, I was just saying that Camelot is it's a symbol. It's a very powerful symbol. You know, and actually all these shield symbols and Camelot was real. I mean, it was a real. You know, people don't know that, but Camelot was a real thing. And like all of this coded language, like the shield symbols and stuff like that, it's all written in like the original Camelot language. You know, every little piece has a meaning. You know, the four chambers of it. Granted, nobody really, you know, in the secret society, they love this stuff because what they don't realize is they were indoctrinated with the same lies. You know, so they have different lies than we do. They're a little higher up, right?
Right.
But it's still all lies. All of these rituals, any kind of ritual, any kind of thing, it's you know, there's magic there, but the real magic is that it affects the way we think. And we are the creators. So because it affects the way we think, we end up creating something.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if we would just realize that the power was always in us, right? We held the power. Then we can affect what the world becomes based on what we spend our time and our energy invested in. You know, our heart and our mind. You know, the actual consciousness of our thought. The 5% of our conscious, you know, our life is really conscious thought. And that will direct everything else in your subconscious. If you can connect with that powerful part of yourself, we can change the world overnight.
Yes, we can. All right. Well, let's see what we're gonna do then tomorrow. we'll end this here, and we'll be back. Be sure to subscribe and share and give positive comments, thumbs ups, all those good things. And we'll be back. We'll be back tomorrow. And peace out, everybody.
Peace out, New York. Later, Dan.
All right. Bye bye.